Hey odds, evens, and everything in betweenins, it's your boy, Captain Bookworm. Welcome to the first episode of Worth 1,000 Words, the show where I reignite my love of reading books by reviewing and drawing fan art at the same time. Today's episode, Dark Rise by C.S. Pacat. Now, I have not written a review that was meant to be anything more than a thought dump to my Discord chats, so here's how it's gonna work. I'm gonna go over the setup and explain who I think would enjoy this book, then I'll get into my spoilery thoughts. Savvy? Cool, let's go. Dark Rise is the first of a trilogy released in 2021. The second book is out, I just haven't gotten around to reading it yet. The author, C.S. Pacat, also wrote the Fence graphic novels and a much more adult series that is definitely not my thing. The story follows Will Kempin, an orphan on the run from the people who murdered his mother. But little does he know, he's embroiled in a millennia-old magical war between the forces of darkness, headed by the mysterious Lord Simon, who ordered his mother's death, and the forces of light, the stewards who preserve knowledge and power as magic slowly fades from the world. I think the ideal reader for this book would be an older Magisterium fan who also likes enemies to lovers. Basically, it's like this comic version of Magisterium, but dial up the angst by about 60%, add some sexual tension, and sprinkle in some existential dread. If that sounds like something for you, close this video and go read it, then come back because from now on I'm going to be very liberal with spoilers. This book is much more driven by the characters and the world building than it is on plot. Since it's the first of a trilogy, it's first and foremost about setting up the world, the characters and their motivations, and so on. Most of the plot consists of our heroes going to and from the hall like it's the main base of a video game, completing smaller chapters of the storyline before the next one unlocks. I really like character-driven stories though, and especially since this book is good about using because, so, but storytelling rather than and then storytelling. The stewards rescue Will and Violet, but they're being pursued by Simon's shadows, so they are taken into the hall, but etc, etc, etc. As opposed to this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. Now, the reason I say Magisterium fans will enjoy this is because it pulls from a similar place of angst that Call and Constantine did. James, Will, Simon, and maybe Violet, it's hard to tell, are all either low-key or high-key reincarnations of the people who define the struggle between light and dark at the height of magic. James, for example, is the reincarnation of the Dark King's general, but Will is a descendant of the lady who defeated him rather than the literal reincarnation. With the ones like James, everyone around him, even his biological father, treat him like the general rather than an entirely separate person who doesn't remember doing all of those evil things before. Unfortunately for me specifically, he's more of an antagonistic force in this book than a character, but from the looks of it that changes in book 2, so hopefully I'll get the Copper Gauntlet angst I'm craving. Honestly, all of the characters are great. Will was a standout for me, as I found him very delightful. Pretty much everyone else suffered a bit from strange motivation-itis or not enough screen time syndrome, but it did leave me wanting more of them rather than less, so it's a problem that can be easily fixed in the next book. The last thing I want to praise today is the atmosphere. Pitch perfect, excellent, no notes. I saw an interview somewhere where C.S. Pacat said she was inspired by walking through an empty museum, and I totally got that. Reading it felt like walking through a dusty old house you're not sure if it's haunted or not. That being said, I do have a few criticisms. First, it has a habit of skipping some action scenes and then describing them in hindsight. In some cases, it works with giving the reader the vibe that Will is an unreliable narrator, but sometimes it extends to Violet when it really shouldn't. It's not the worst, but it is a little annoying. Much more glaringly is the whole thing with James. Like, I get the angst factor, but the romance part of it was kind of weird for me. Maybe it's my asexuality, but I kept being like, can you two horny-ass teenagers talk like normal people for 1 second, please? Yeah, I get that they're like cosmically linked or some shit, and Will was the only one who treated James like an actual person, but it edged a bit too close to non-con for my liking. Thankfully, they managed to have enough aforementioned Will treating James like a person moments that I get why he switched sides. I don't know. All for the game irreparably skewed my consentometer, and I can't say I'm upset about that. The last thing is that the stewards don't really accomplish much. If anything, they get in our hero's way. I wish they'd been explored more, especially the elder steward. I really liked her. As much as I'm done complaining. I did enjoy this book a lot. It's entirely possible that I'll change my mind, as the author and I seem to be on different wavelengths just in taste. But I'm a sucker for good angst and an unreliable narrator, so I am optimistic and I will likely be continuing the series. And here's the finished drawing. Hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe because I plan to do much more of these. It's like a diet spoiler alert with way fewer drawings. So stay tuned. Bye!